Hi, I'm Juliet here with Silicon Slopes. I'm with Jeremy Andrus, CEO of Tragus. How are you, Jeremy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, thank
Good.
you. This is your second or third Silicon Slopes?
Do you know what? I've been doing this for years.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, I have seen
Okay.
this thing grow over time.
So you've been in Utah a long time now, right?
You know what? I should say I'm from here now. I've been here 17 years now.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
You're from Utah then, period.
It's as long as I've ever lived everywhere, and it's the favorite place I've ever lived. So
And you moved Tragus here, right? Traeger.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Traeger here. From where?
From Oregon.
Oregon.
So Traeger is actually a 35-year-old brand. It was a $70 million brand when we found it 9 years ago. We bought it, and we brought it to Utah. I had
Right.
built a brand here before, and it just felt like the perfect place to build a team.
Right.
And selfishly, my family loves Utah, and we wanted to stay.
And it's great that you actually moved to Utah to kind of rebuild this brand. You know, Utah is has a very strong community. And
Yes.
I know you were going through a shift in company culture.
Yeah.
And this seems like the perfect place to kind of rebuild that from the ground up.
Absolutely.
If you want to more elaborate on that and like what your journey like that was like.
100%. I mean, I would say a couple of things. One, not having grown up in Utah, when I came here and built Skull Candy, built a team of 300 people, I was really, I was impressed by how industrious people in this state are. They work hard, they're passionate, they're team oriented, they're caring, they're committed. And these are all sort of the values that you just aspire to have on your team, whether you're a leader or you're simply a member of the team at whatever level. And so I had this 8-year experience here. And when we acquired Traeger, the intent was to actually not move the business here. But I got on the inside, and culturally it was so toxic and broken. And as opposed to rebuild it in Oregon, I said, you know what? I'm going to take this 27-year-old team, say goodbye to almost everyone, bring the business here, and rebuild it. And really with this foundation of people and culture and team. And it's been awesome. I mean, you look at this now 36, 37-year-old business, the difference being the place that we built it and the team that we built around it, it's just really changed the course of the business.
I take it that wasn't a light decision, right?
It was a hard decision. It was a hard thing to do, too.
And you tried very hard to work with what you already had.
Totally.
I just, when you talk about shifting company culture, I mean, you would love to just start from the ground up. So I know that you tried very hard in the beginning to like work with what you had, and then you kind of had to ultimately make that decision.
Very much so. And,
Right.
and this was actually an interesting lesson for me, and maybe slightly cynical on human beings, which is that we don't really change that much. And so as you think about being an entrepreneur, how do you really build culture? Well, you're very intentional. Like what is my vision for the business? What is the environment that I'm trying to create for my team? The best way to build culture is to filter for culture before people come in the door. And so you would love to inspire people to become different people so they really fit what you're trying to build. But if you define who you're looking for and you really filter based on that, then suddenly, very intentionally you end up with a culture that supports your mission.
Yes, there's lots of companies that come to mind when you talk about filtering from the get-go, right? Like Zappos, for instance. Did you ever hear they offered a $5,000 for people to turn down the job?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So Zappos is interesting to say that. I actually went down to Zappos and really studied Tony and the culture that he built and how we built it. The culture was so strong that what it really did is ultimately the brand and the experience that consumers had, it was a result of the culture that started at ground zero. And so when people believe the way you believe and they know how we think and what our vision is, It's this very powerful way of scaling a brand and a business, and I was blown away by just how consistent the culture at Zappos was, and that's what we aspired to build.
And how do you feel community drives purpose at Traeger?
So for us, community is everything. We call our community the Traegerhood, and Traeger's mission is to bring people together to create a more flavorful world. And so, of course, the flavors in the food, and it's wood fired, and Traeger makes amazing food. We all know that, right? But the flavor for us is in the richness of a life well lived, and it's about how we bring people around the table. And food is that common bond that is very communal. You build experiences over food, regardless of where you come from. But Traeger is all about community. And that's something like at first we talked a lot about brand. And then ultimately we realized that, and I think the pandemic really motivated different thinking about what Traeger was all about. People missed community. People missed human beings. And they self-organized digitally. But when they had the opportunity to come together in a backyard and share a great meal and share an experience, that is community. And so that is our underlying missions. How do we bring people together, regardless of what walk of life you come from?
Definitely, and the ethos is already there, right? Food brings people together.
100%.
Always.
Yeah.
And so, did you have this focus on culture when you were at Skullcandy as well?
Do you know what? It's an interesting question. I've always appreciated good culture. I don't know that I always understood exactly what culture was. And like early in my career, like you go out and you get a job.
Yeah.
And you just like it, and you realize that some places you show up and you feel good. In some places, Sunday night rolls around and you feel a pit in your stomach. It's like, I got to go back. And that's culture. Culture is like, how do we unlock people's best selves? How do we stretch people and inspire them to deliver more than they could otherwise? That's culture. How do we align vision and values? That's culture. And so earlier in my career, I didn't completely understand it. Skullcandy, the culture, we had a great culture. I mean, we built it, but very organically, and I would say less intentionally. And what I realized looking back on my Skullcandy experience is that the culture ebbed and flowed. And, some of the things that happened after we went public were not great for the culture. They weren't intentional. But what I learned is culture is the X factor in a business. You always bring smart people together. They have to be capable. They have to have a pedigree. But the X factor is culture. I think that's the case on any team, whether it be business, any organization, athletics. And so this X factor, you protect it because it's important. And I have just learned you protect culture, you build it very deliberately, and you protect it with your life. Because you can be great, but if your culture gets diluted, your business is not going to win long term.
How do you protect against something like that?
You know what? I think really understanding what do you stand for, what are the outside forces that could harm it, what are some of the internal forces that can harm it, who lives the culture and who doesn't. So we talk about the culture, we evangelize, we recognize, and it's part of our conversation. And when you have those that aren't living the culture, you just have to say goodbye. And culture is not easy to filter for, and it's something that we talk a lot about. But I think part of the way you protect it is you make sure that those that, and they're all good human beings, but if you are not a multiplier of the culture, you're in the wrong place. And as a leader, you have to let them go. The other thing I would say is that businesses ebb and flow.
Right.
They're not up and to the right every year, every quarter. You wish they were, but the most important time to protect culture is when things aren't going well. And culture, when you have wind in your sails, like winning cures a lot in business, but when you really need culture is when the chips are down and things are hard. And so that's something that we've thought a lot about the last year. I mean, last year's been a tough year for Traeger.
I think everyone's been feeling this.
It's like coming out of a pandemic and supply chain and consumer behavioral shifts. It's a complicated moment to run a business. And so this is the moment where I think you step back and you ask yourself, what do we stand for? You look in the mirror every day and you say, are we living our culture? And then as a leader, you model, you empower, and you really ensure that those that live it are recognized for it. And it feels good. I mean, it feels good when people are aligned. And every once in a while, you see chinks in your armor, and you have to recognize those early because you can fix them. But when culture slides too far, like it did at Traeger, I mean, when we bought this 27-year-old business, the culture didn't stand for anything that I was proud of. And it would have been impossible to fix without starting over.
Yeah, I read a little bit about the problems you were having. CFO didn't have time to meet with you, right?
You read one of those articles.
Yeah, I did.
It was unbelievable. I mean, like I could tell story upon story. And again, I look back and many of those people that I said goodbye to we've become friendly lately, later in this experience. Yeah. But at the time, there was some animosity, and what I tried to articulate is, this is not about good or bad. This is about what I am trying to build, and what I believe we have to build to be successful long term. And so, I think as they look at it from the outside in, and they see a business that completely changed its trajectory, steady grower for 27 years. That really took off when we rebuilt team and culture. It's a testament to how it works. And you don't always see that in a startup because there are so many variables that drive success. Product market fit, financing, team, competition, changing environments. But you take a 27-year-old business and you change a single variable and it takes off. I just think it demonstrates how powerful culture is.
That's insightful. Now you're here in Utah. I'm also not from Utah. I came here, loved it. I never experienced community this way either. Mm-hmm. Especially coming from a place like Las Vegas. It's very much make it yourself, hustle culture sort of vibe versus coming to a place like Utah where everything just sort of works. They don't call it the beehive state for anything,
it's
right?
It's industrious, but it's also very friendly.
It's so friendly.
It's like disarmingly friendly. I remember I'm from the East Coast originally.
Yeah.
And East Coast, we're all about we're strictly business. And I remember showing up here and walking down the streets of Salt Lake and people smiling, looking me in the eyes and saying hi. Hold on a second. Do I know that person?
Yeah.
And they realize, no, this is just a friendly place. It's part of the joy of being in a community where people actually support one another. Mm. And I remember seeing that during the pandemic. I mean, this thing hits, and within days, I'm on a conference call on a Sunday afternoon with 100 other CEOs saying, "What can we do together?" Having no idea what we were up against, and that just didn't happen in other places. I talked to CEOs. East Coast, West Coast, and there really is something special about a desire to be part of what's going on here. And it's kind of cool because it's of course we have our own selfish interests and our own needs, and we have competition. But when it's not all about me, but there's this greater good that we're proud to be part of what's going on in Utah. It's really cool. It feels good. I mean, it feels good to show up here to the Silicon Slopes conference. And I just every 10 feet, I stop and I either see an old friend that I see once a year here, I meet a new friend, and these people become your community. And it's grown tremendously since I came here in, March of 2005.
Wow.
It's grown tremendously, and yet it's I come to this conference and it still feels small. And that's because it's friendly and it's familial like a great community should be.
And Small Lake City, right?
Small Lake City, absolutely.
So what's in the future for Traeger? What's in the cards?
You know what? We are going to build something that lasts forever. And that's always been my aspiration. And early on as an entrepreneur, there's kind of this desperation to succeed, and there's some greed. I want to make a little bit of money. And having been through this a couple of times, my aspiration is to build something special that lasts. And building special is about the people that are involved, the people that are part of our company. It's about our community, our customers. And what that means is delivering the best possible experience we can every day. It's about reinventing ourselves. It's about living in habitat with our consumers, knowing them, understanding them, bringing them innovation, bringing them better experiences. And I fundamentally believe there's so many things that it takes to make a business go. But if you obsess over building something that your customers value, that is an important part of their lives, and you say, we are not cutting corners in what we're building, we're going to build something that lasts. That's the joy of building something, because it's not to make a buck at the end of the day. That comes if you do it right, but building something that lasts forever, that's the legacy of a great entrepreneur. And it's been interesting for me, having been through this, to see my motivations change and ensure that there's a real foundation at whatever investment, whatever cost, there's a foundation that allows it to survive and thrive.
That's a really nice sentiment, especially to hear, here in Utah, I feel like the biggest thing I learned from this place is consistency. I've never experienced consistency like I've experienced it in Utah. And it shows in all of our companies, right? That we have it.
Absolutely.
Silicon Slopes right now.
It's consistent. It's a marathon. I mean, like it truly is. It's like, you take pride in what you do every single day with everything that you deliver. And that's ultimately the fabric of something great. And that 100% exists here.
How would you say your values have changed, though? I was just curious about that when you mentioned it. You said, because I know that when you start out as an entrepreneur, everything's so shiny, everything's so exciting, and you want to do 7 projects at once and keep going. But tell me about your journey.
Do you know what? My journey as an entrepreneur, early on, it's all about you. It's like, I'm going to build, I'm going to succeed, I'm going to make money, I'm going to be known. And you get beyond that, and you realize, and there was a moment in my career in this journey where I realized that I'm only the center of my own universe. I'm only the protagonist in my own book or movie. And that is the case with every other person. And so when you start to build, caring as much about the other people that are part of what you're building as you do about yourself, when you actually care about their successes, their progress, their happiness, and you truly want them to be successful and to find satisfaction, joy in what they do as much as you do in yourself, that's actually unlocks the best. It's the greatest joy as a leader. And it is like that really fueled me differently than it was about when it was about me. And you do things with your team not for business alignment reasons. You do it because it's the right way to live. And I remember reading Clayton Christensen's "How Will I Measure My Life?" And he talks about management being a noble profession, not just because you're signing someone's paycheck or their W-2 direct deposit, but you are helping them become their best self, not just professionally, but what they take home is confidence and energy and strength, and they get beyond adversity. It makes them better, and they're better community members, mom, dads, partners, husbands, wives, and that's ultimately what I think what makes the legacy of a leader is your commitment to giving an experience to someone else the same way that you would like to have in your career. It's the joy of a team, and it's like I think members of a team authentically recognize that, and they want to give so much more to that leader.
And that just to come full circle, it just ties back into your company culture. So I did want to know, like, what practices that you have inside your company that facilitate this culture, right? And you just kind of explained it for everyone that it just starts with you kind of giving back and like looking outside of yourself and, paying attention to others and what they need. And it's not about you.
It's not about me.
Yeah, it's not.
You know what? And leaders and entrepreneurs, and like we love to make it about us. And you know what? When you make it about others, it's like they glow and they become remarkable. And it's unexpected, but it's also contagious. Like you see that pervade your culture.
It's refreshing to hear. You don't hear it every day that a leader wants to operate in a sense where they're doing what's right versus what's good for the business, right? Because it's always a balance.
It's a balance. Look, and it's an important balance, and it's not to say that we are running for-profit organizations, and so ultimately you have to create value. Like my greatest realization is that not only are these approaches and philosophies not mutually exclusive, they actually support one another. There's no reason why doing the right thing for your people should detract from building a successful, profitable organization. Every once in a while, you have to, kindness clear. Every once in a while, people don't make the cut, and you free up their future to go find themselves somewhere else. But I think these principles are actually very symbiotic.
And a lot of companies right now are going through this really hard time during the economic crisis. We're coming out of COVID. A lot of companies are doing a very big layoffs right now, and they're having a big shift in company culture as a result. Also, just trying to return to work.
Yeah.
A lot of people have conflicting ideologies about it. And like, what advice would you have for some companies that inevitably in Utah that are also facing the same struggles to kind of nurture that culture for the future?
You know what? When you are going through a tough time, double down on culture. Protect it. Double down. The future of work. Like, where do we work? Are we virtual? Do we come into an office? Everyone will figure that out for themselves. I tend to have a strong opinion that there's a lot of good that came out of the flexibility of the pandemic to be able to manage your schedule, see your kids at certain moments, whatever hobbies or passions you have. But I also deeply believe that human beings crave connection, and sitting on Zoom and being virtual all of the time is a very unsatisfying way to interact with people. And I remember having a couple of feelings, a few months into the pandemic. Number one, super productive. I go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and with 5 minutes in between, grab a bite and I'm right back to work. No commute. I have to go from office to office. But the overwhelming feeling I had was it just wasn't as satisfying. It's just like the relationships aren't the same. And so there's something about a hybrid model where you get the best of, the days where you want to be productive, put your head down, be uninterrupted. It's awesome. But to truly collaborate, I think relationships matter. Showing up to a place where, you can be in person. Those are the days that I feel most satisfied. Not always most productive, but I leave feeling satisfied when I've reconnected in person with my team. And so that's something that we're in the process of building at Traeger. And you know what? I'm confident we'll lose a few people along the way. There are definitely those who live blocks from the office that say, I want to work from my condo or my apartment every day. And those just, that's not going to be our team, because we are about community. Community, I think, is how you unlock value. And Traeger's not going to be a virtual environment every day of the week, maybe a couple of days a week.
It's a hard one to sustain, for sure.
It's very hard.
A virtual environment is very hard to sustain.
We're going to see how this plays out over time, but I hear some theories around building something completely virtual forever, and I have my skepticisms, and I know some really bright entrepreneurs that have that perspective, and maybe they'll prove me wrong.
Well, when you're a culture person, like face-to-face contact is
everything.
It's everything. It's collisions, right? Collisions
Truly.
are what make things happen. It's because you're in real time able to kind of like talk things out with people. It's where
Absolutely.
luck plays in,
Indeed.
You don't get luck on Zoom.
The combustion happens like the random spontaneity happens walking the halls and saying hello, and then ending up in a great conversation.
And that's like an essential tool for entrepreneurs as
100%.
well, right? Luck.
Yep.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your
My pleasure.
time, Jeremy.
I enjoyed
Thank you
it
so much.
Nice to catch up.